The Isaiah Factor Uncensored starts right now.
And welcome to the Factor Uncensored. Tonight, we are dedicating time to our young people in the community and the issues many of them face. One devastating one is the rate of suicide. New research indicates that over the last 2 decades, the rate of suicide rose by 50% among those 10 to 14 years old. What is happening and how do we stop it? We brought together a group of experts and community leaders to talk about it. And our guests are here to discuss this disturbing surge in teen suicides, young people taking their own lives. And let's begin with you. You guys recently did a roundtable at Children at Risk about the surge in the number of teen suicides, specifically 10 to 14 years old. What did we find out in your research and in those discussions with the experts?
So I want to start out by saying the reason that we decided to address the topic was we were hearing long before COVID that the rates of youth suicide had increased by about 50% over the last decade, which is a huge number of young people taking their lives. And we know that it's a very complex issue. Also, I mean, we know that currently the second most common cause of death for 10 to 24-year-olds is suicide. So it's very alarming. Is the reason why we undertook this study to begin with. And I would say that the greater isolation that students and our youth experience during COVID just, gave us that much more urgency to dig deeper. And some of the outcomes that we learned, there are prevention practices that are happening, that are bright spots and innovations that are happening, but we really have concerns that those innovations, are they equivalent to the need, right, that we had even before COVID. And now we're going to understand those numbers even better as things move forward. And so that's kind of one of our big takeaways is there are great things happening. And so can we kind of replicate some of those things? Can we kind of expand some of those approaches? And we have some of the resources to do that now with some of the federal funding that's coming along for COVID relief.
Now let's talk to Dr. Smith. Dr. Smith, I read several stories where parents said there were no signs, there were no indicators, there was no bullying that they saw, and they considered it something to the effect of impulsivity with their child, just reacting to a situation. Your thoughts on impulsivity in youth suicide?
Yeah, so their frontal lobe isn't fully matured yet. And our frontal lobe doesn't fully mature until we're about age 25. And so that frontal lobe is responsible for that executive functioning, which is that planning and that impulse control. So there are going to be some situations where parents are like, I didn't see anything. However, there are a large number of situations, about 4 out of 5, where there are some indications, whether it's verbally or behavioral, that parents might see. So when we talk about that impulse control, if let's say you take their phone away and then they go from 0 to the world is about to end, that would potentially be an indication for a parent to say, okay, this doesn't necessarily equate to suicide, but what we are seeing is that they don't have the ability to manage that impulse control. And then how can we then equip them with the tools to better manage that?
So let's continue on with Dr. Gibson. When we talk about the signs, the traditional signs that parents should look for, what are some of those signs that they should be aware of with their young people in their families?
Well, we're not very clear on what depression looks like in young children because they're so different. Children are different, their lives are controlled. And parents are often left asking, what are the signs that I missed? We've had a decrease overall in suicides during the pandemic. And this is speculation on my part, but I'm thinking that what might be a factor is the presence of other persons. So monitoring and being aware of what your child is doing, his or her emotions are important. Now, I will say that even though we're hearing that there was some amount of a decrease, much of that decrease is amongst white adults. But amongst African Americans, there has been an increase in some parts of the country with suicide during the pandemic. So things are different for different groups of people.
And for those who are looking for answers, where can they go for answers? Where can parents go if they're just concerned and they want to talk to somebody as well?
Absolutely. There are many resources online. There's a national suicide hotline. In fact, that data that I shared with you from the very top of your first question, it comes from that suicide hotline, and it's a national hotline that they can call. We can share that. Maybe your staff can share that. And that would be, the first place to go, because you can talk to somebody who is knowledgeable about the topic. Also, your family healthcare provider, if you have one, if you have a medical home, is a great place to start. They probably know your child, or they know you, and the situation that you live in better than anybody else. And then thinking about all the other protective factors are family members and your pastor or your priest or your rabbi. Just thinking about who can help create that safety net, because you may or may not be the most effective person to talk to your child about an issue. And if you find that you're not being open, then don't be afraid to reach out to somebody that is a great resource and a person that your child trusts. And then I think states in general are looking at some systemic changes, like looking at school counselors and making them more available for parents and children, also to have access to them on a more regular basis. And so there are lots of resources around parents, and I would just counsel just not to give up and keep going until you find someone that your child can talk to, or that you can talk to and get trusted information.